The most powerful object ever built by human hands has vanished from the face of the earth, and no one can tell you with certainty where it is right now at this very moment. You have heard stories about the Ark of the Covenant, but you have never been told the full truth about what it was, why it mattered, and why its disappearance is one of history's greatest mysteries. The Ark was not a golden decoration. It was the earthly throne of the living God. His visible glory sat between the cherubim, and from that seat he spoke, judged, and dwelled among his people. Most Christians do not understand why the Ark still matters. They think it belongs to the Old Testament and has no relevance today. But the Ark points directly to Jesus Christ and his finished work. Today, I am going to walk you through the full story of the Ark of the Covenant, from its creation to its disappearance, and show you why it still matters more than you realize. The story begins at Mount Sinai. God had delivered Israel from Egypt with mighty signs and wonders. He brought them through the Red Sea and led them to the mountain, where he descended in fire. Exodus chapter 25 verse 8 says, "Let them make me a sanctuary, that I may dwell among them." God wanted to live among his people. He desired closeness, not distance, with those he had redeemed. But God is holy. He cannot dwell among sinful people without a mediating structure. So he gave Moses exact instructions for building the tabernacle, and at the very center of it was the ark. Exodus chapter 25 verse 10 says, "They shall make an ark of acacia wood, 2.5 cubits long, 1.5 cubits wide, and 1.5 cubits high." Every measurement was given by God. Every material was specified by God. Every detail mattered, because this was not a human invention. This was a divine blueprint downloaded from the throne room of heaven. Exodus chapter 25 verse 11 says, "You shall overlay it with pure gold. Inside and out you shall overlay it, and shall make on it a molding of gold all around it." The ark was wood covered in gold. The wood speaks of humanity. The gold speaks of divinity. Many scholars see in this a foreshadowing of Jesus Christ, who was fully human and fully God in one person. Exodus chapter 25 verse 17 says, "You shall make a mercy seat of pure gold, 2.5 cubits long and 1.5 cubits wide." The mercy seat was solid gold. The mercy seat was the lid of the ark. It was the most sacred surface in all of Israel. It was where the blood of atonement was sprinkled once a year on the Day of Atonement. Exodus chapter 25 verses 18 through 20 describe 2 cherubim of gold, one on each end of the mercy seat, with their wings stretched out covering the mercy seat and their faces looking downward. The cherubim faced each other and looked down at the mercy seat. They were looking at the place where the blood would be applied. They were gazing upon the very spot where atonement was made. Exodus chapter 25 verse 22 says, "There I will meet with you, and I will speak with you from above the mercy seat, from between the 2 cherubim." God spoke from the ark. The ark was not just sacred furniture. It was the communication point between God and man. It was where the infinite met the finite. It was where the Creator spoke to the creation directly. Inside the ark were 3 items. Hebrews chapter 9 verse 4 says the ark contained the gold pot that had the manna, Aaron's rod that budded, and the tablets of the covenant of stone. The tablets of the law represented God's righteous standard. The manna represented God's faithful provision. Aaron's rod that budded represented God's chosen authority. Each item testified to the character and faithfulness of God. Above the ark dwelled the Shekinah glory. This was the visible manifestation of God's presence. It appeared as a cloud by day and fire by night. It was the glory that filled the tabernacle. Exodus chapter 40 verse 34 says the cloud covered the tabernacle of meeting, and the glory of the Lord filled the tabernacle. Moses could not enter because the glory was too overwhelming for him. This glory was concentrated above the mercy seat between the cherubim. Leviticus chapter 16 verse 2 says God told Moses, "I will appear in the cloud above the mercy seat." That was his earthly throne. Now the ark begins to move through Israel's history, and every place it goes demonstrates the extraordinary power of the God who dwells upon it. The ark was not symbolic. It carried real power. Joshua chapter 3 records the moment when the ark led Israel across the Jordan River. The priests carrying the ark stepped into the water, and the river stopped flowing and piled up in a heap. Joshua chapter 3 verse 17 says the priests who bore the ark of the covenant of the Lord stood firm on dry ground in the midst of the Jordan, while all Israel crossed over. The ark split the Jordan River just as God had split the Red Sea. The power was not in the gold or the wood. The power was in the presence of God who dwelled above the mercy seat. Joshua chapter 6 records the Battle of Jericho. The priests carried the ark around the city once a day for 6 days. On the 7th day they marched around it 7 times and shouted. Joshua chapter 6 verse 20 says the wall fell down flat. The walls of Jericho collapsed, not because of military strategy or engineering, but because the presence of God on the ark shook the foundations. The ark was the secret weapon of Israel. Wherever it went, God went. Wherever God went, victory followed. The nations feared the ark because they feared the God who sat enthroned upon it. 1 Samuel chapter 4 records a dark chapter in the ark's history. Israel was losing a battle against the Philistines, and the elders decided to bring the ark from Shiloh to the battlefield. They treated the ark like a good luck charm. They thought its mere presence would guarantee victory. But God will not be manipulated. He will not be reduced to a talisman for human purposes. 1 Samuel chapter 4 verse 11 says the ark of God was captured, and the 2 sons of Eli, Hophni and Phinehas, died. Israel was defeated, and the ark was taken by the Philistines. The Philistines took the ark into the temple of their god Dagon. 1 Samuel chapter 5 verse 3 says when they arose early, the next morning Dagon had fallen on its face before the ark. They set Dagon up again. 1 Samuel chapter 5 verse 4 says the next morning Dagon had fallen again, and this time its head and both palms were broken off on the threshold. The false god was dismembered before the ark of the true God. The God of Israel was demonstrating that no idol, no principality, and no power can stand in the presence of his glory. 1 Samuel chapter 5 verses 6 through 12 record that God struck the Philistines with tumors and death in every city where the ark was taken. The Philistines were desperate to send it back. 1 Samuel chapter 6 records the Philistines sending the ark back to Israel on a new cart pulled by 2 cows. The cows went straight to Beth Shemesh in Israel, confirming God's supernatural direction. The ark eventually came to rest in Kiriath Jearim for 20 years. 1 Samuel chapter 7 verse 2 says the ark remained in Kiriath Jearim, and all the house of Israel lamented after the Lord. Then David became king, and he made it his mission to bring the ark to Jerusalem. 2 Samuel chapter 6 records this journey. David's first attempt ended in tragedy because they did not follow God's instructions. 2 Samuel chapter 6 verse 6 says when they came to the threshing floor of Nachon, Uzzah put out his hand to the ark of God and took hold in it, for the oxen stumbled. 2 Samuel chapter 6 verse 7 says the anger of the Lord was aroused against Uzzah, and God struck him there for his error, and he died there by the ark of God on that day. Uzzah touched the ark. He may have had good intentions, but God's holiness is not subject to human interpretation. The ark was so sacred that unauthorized contact with it resulted in immediate death, without exception. This terrified David. 2 Samuel chapter 6 verse 9 says David was afraid of the Lord that day, and said, "How can the ark of the Lord come to me?" He feared God's holiness. 3 months later, David tried again. This time the ark was carried by the Levites on poles, as God had originally commanded. 2 Samuel chapter 6 verse 12 says they brought the ark with rejoicing. 2 Samuel chapter 6 verse 14 says David danced before the Lord with all his might. He was wearing a linen ephod. David worshipped with everything he had as the ark entered Jerusalem at last. David placed the ark in a tent he had prepared. 2 Samuel chapter 6 verse 17 says they brought the ark of the Lord and set it in its place in the midst of the tabernacle. Years later, Solomon built the temple. 1 Kings chapter 8 verse 6 says the priests brought the ark of the covenant of the Lord to its place in the inner sanctuary, the most holy place. 1 Kings chapter 8 verse 10 says when the priests came out of the holy place, the cloud filled the house of the Lord. The Shekinah glory filled Solomon's temple because the ark was there. 1 Kings chapter 8 verse 11 says the priests could not continue ministering because of the cloud, for the glory of the Lord filled the house of the Lord. The presence was overwhelming. For centuries, the ark remained in the most holy place of Solomon's temple. The high priest entered once a year on the Day of Atonement to sprinkle blood on the mercy seat for Israel. Then something happened. The ark disappeared. The Bible gives no clear account of its removal. Between the reign of the last faithful kings and the Babylonian destruction of the temple, the ark vanished. 2 Chronicles chapter 35 verse 3 contains the last direct reference. Josiah told the Levites to put the holy ark in the house which Solomon the son of David built. This was around 622 BC. Some scholars believe Josiah had the ark hidden beneath the Temple Mount in a secret chamber to protect it from the coming Babylonian invasion that the prophets had been warning about for years. 2 Maccabees, an ancient Jewish text, records that the prophet Jeremiah hid the ark in a cave on Mount Nebo before Babylon destroyed Jerusalem. This tradition places the ark across the Jordan River. Ethiopian tradition claims the ark was taken to Axum in Ethiopia by Menelik, the son of Solomon and the Queen of Sheba. The Church of Our Lady Mary of Zion claims to house it. Some researchers believe the ark was destroyed by the Babylonians when they burned the temple in 586 BC. 2 Kings chapter 25 verse 9 says, Nebuzaradan burned the house of the Lord completely. But the list of temple treasures taken to Babylon in 2 Kings chapter 25 does not mention the ark. If it had been captured, it would have been listed. Its absence suggests it was hidden. Jeremiah chapter 3 verse 16 offers a remarkable prophecy. God says in those days they shall say no more the ark of the covenant of the Lord. It shall not come to mind. God told Jeremiah that a day would come when the ark would no longer be needed, no longer remembered, no longer missed. Why would God say this about the most sacred object in Israel? Because something greater was coming. The ark was a shadow. The mercy seat was a type. The blood sprinkled once a year was a foreshadowing. Everything about the ark pointed forward to Jesus Christ. Hebrews chapter 9 verse 11 says Christ came as high priest of the good things to come with the greater and more perfect tabernacle, not made with hands, not of this earthly creation at all. Hebrews chapter 9 verse 12 says not with the blood of goats and calves, but with his own blood. He entered the most holy place once for all, having obtained eternal redemption for all believers. Jesus is the true ark. He is the meeting place between God and man. He is the mercy seat where the blood of atonement was applied. He is where the glory of God dwells fully. The tablets of the law were inside the ark. Jesus fulfilled the law perfectly. Matthew chapter 5 verse 17 says, I did not come to destroy the law, but to fulfill it completely. The manna was inside the ark. Jesus said in John chapter 6 verse 35, I am the bread of life. He who comes to me shall never hunger. Jesus is the true manna. Aaron's rod was inside the ark. It budded, blossomed, and bore fruit overnight as a sign of resurrection. Jesus died, was buried, and rose again on the third day. He is the resurrection. The ark has not truly vanished. It has been fulfilled. What the golden chest contained in shadow, Jesus Christ embodies in fullness. The presence of God no longer dwells in a box, but in a person. Revelation chapter 11 verse 19 says the temple of God was opened in heaven, and the ark of his covenant was seen in his temple. The ark is in heaven. God has been guarding it. The ark still matters, because it tells the story of a God who desires to dwell among his people. That desire was fulfilled in Jesus Christ, who is Emmanuel, God with us, now and forever.